welcome back. So, if you remember, the children had just landed in the plane in Dame Slap's garden and now they've been locked up for being naughty. Let's see if they can get out. So, chapter 21. Silky's clock is very clever. Joe sat hunched up near to Moonface, Silky and Bessie. Joe sat hunched up near to Moonface. Silky and Bessie and Fanny talked together. The white goat sat on Bessie's knee and slept. The 7 hens tried to scratch the hard floor and clucked softly. "Where's my clock?" said Silky suddenly. Everyone looked round the room for it. It wasn't there. "It must have been left behind in the schoolroom," said Joe. "Never mind, Silky. You may get it back if we get out of here in 3 hours' time." "I hope so," said Silky. "It was a nice clock, and I liked it having feet to walk about on." "It's lucky not to be locked up like us," said Joe gloomily. "If there was a window in this silly round room, we might break it and escape through that, but there isn't even a small window." "And there isn't a fireplace either," said Moonface. "If there was, we might squeeze up the chimney." "Listen," he said suddenly. "There's someone knocking at the door." They listened. Certainly there was someone outside, knocking gently. "Come in, if you can," said Moonface. "Unlock the door if the key's left in." But the key wasn't left in. No, Dame Slap had taken that away, you may be sure. "Who's there?" asked Silky. "Ding dong," said a voice softly. "It's my clock," cried Silky excitedly. "It's come to join us." "Ooh," said Moonface, his big face going red with joy. "Tell your clock to go and get the key from somewhere and let us out, Silky." "That's no good," said Silky. "I noticed that Dame Slap wore all her keys on a string that hung from her waist. The clock could never get her key from her." "Oh," said Moonface sadly. Everybody thought hard. "Ding dong," said the clock outside and knocked again. "Look here, clock, it isn't a bit of good your dinging and donging and knocking to get in," called Joe. "We are locked into this room and we haven't got a key to get out." "Dong," said the clock dolefully, and then it gave an excited ding and began to dance about on its big feet, up and down, with its door wide open. "Whatever is that clock doing?" said Silky in astonishment. "Warming its feet, I should think," said Fanny with a giggle. But it wasn't. It was jerking about, trying to jolt its own key off the little hook inside it, and at last it managed it. Clang! The key fell to the ground. "Whatever is your clock doing?" said Joe to Silky. "It must have gone mad." It hadn't. It was being very sensible. It kicked at the key with one of its feet, and the key slid under the door and into the room where the children were. "Oh, look," said Moonface in astonishment. "Your clock has jerked its key off the hook and kicked it under the door, Silky. Really, it's a most peculiar clock." Joe snatched up the key. "It might fit the door," he said. He tried it in the lock. It almost turned, but not quite. He was dreadfully disappointed. But Moonface grinned. He took the key and rubbed it with a little magic powder that he kept in a box in his pocket. "Now try it," he said. So Joe slipped it into the lock once more, and it turned right round and unlocked the door. They crowded quietly out of the room, Joe taking the clock's key with him. Silky gave the clock a hug, and it said ding-dong quite loudly with joy. "Shh," said Silky. "Don't make a sound." "We'll try and find our aeroplane," said Joe. "Let's try to get out of the door into the garden. We shall soon find it then." They tiptoed down a long passage, but just as they got to the end, who should they see coming along but old Dame Slap herself. "Quick, "Hide behind these curtains," said Joe. They slipped behind, but Dame Slap had heard something and came up to the curtains. She was just about to pull them apart when Silky's clock walked out, shouted "Ding dong" in her ear and trod on her toes. Dame Slap gave a shout of rage and slapped the clock hard. It ran away down the passage with Dame Slap after it. "Good old clock," said Silky joyfully. "It just walked out and ding-donged in time. Another minute and we would all have been found." "Come on," said Moonface, peeping out of the curtains. "We'd better do our best to get into the garden now, whilst the old dame is out of the way." They tiptoed down a long room and came to a door leading into the garden. Just as Joe was going to open it, he pushed them all quickly back into the room. "Dame Slap is coming in here," he whispered. "Quick, hide behind the furniture." So, quick as lightning, everyone crouched down behind sofas and chairs, whilst Dame Slap opened the door and came in, grumbling. "Wait till I get that clock." And at that very moment, the clock came running in on its flat feet and ding-donged very cheekily at her. Dame Slap picked up her skirts and tore down the long room and up the passage after it. The children and Moonface and Silky, the hens and the goats rushed to the garden door, opened it and crowded out into the garden. "Find the aeroplane, quick!" cried Joe. They ran down the path and looked for the shining aeroplane. "There it is!" shouted Moonface, pointing to the aeroplane lying on the smooth grass. They all ran to it and squeezed in. "I don't like leaving my clock behind," said Silky. "It has been so clever. I wonder where it is." "Look, there it is, with old Dame Slap after it," cried Joe. Sure enough, they saw the clock come waddling out from behind a bush, striking hard, and Dame Slap was after it, panting and very red in the face. The clock dodged neatly round a bush. Dame Slap tripped over a stone and fell down. The clock shot away to the aeroplane and Silky helped it in. It sank down into a corner and struck 63 times without stopping. But this time nobody minded. They thought the clock was really quite a hero. Dame Slap picked herself up and ran towards the aeroplane. Joe pressed down the up and handle. The propeller began to whir round and round. The aeroplane quivered and shook. It rose gently into the air and left Dame Slap below, looking very angry indeed. "Answer this question," shouted Moonface, leaning overboard. "If 5 people, 7 hens, 1 goat and a clock go up in an aeroplane, put down how many slaps should be saved up for when they get home." Everyone giggled. "Do be careful where we land next time," said Bessie. "We really must get home now." "I think I know where we are," said Moonface, as they flew over a curious land where the trees were yellow and the grass was pink. "If you can fly straight on till you come to a silver tower, then to the right till you come to the land of seagulls, then to the left over the 3 Bears Wood, we shall soon be home." "Right," said Joe. He watched out for the silver tower, and when he saw it, tall and gleaming, he pressed the handle marked "to the right" and flew on till he came to the land of seagulls. This was quite easy to know, for all round and about, flying on snow-white wings, were hundreds of magnificent gulls. The aeroplane had to go slowly through the crowds of lovely birds. Joe flew to the left, and soon they were over the 3 Bears Wood, and saw the rose-covered cottage where Goldilocks lived with the bears. "Good. Now it won't be long before we're home," said Joe. He flew on till he came over the Enchanted Wood, and then landed in a field not far from it. Everyone jumped out. "That was a most exciting adventure," said Fanny, "but I hope we never see Dame Slap again." "Oh, quick, catch the clock," said Bessie. "It's trying to climb out of the aeroplane and it will fall." "Dong, dong, dong, dong," said the clock, and it slid to the ground. "We'll have to rush home now," said Joe, picking up his spade. "Goodbye, Silky. Goodbye, Moonface. See you soon. Bessie, bring the goat, and Fanny and I will shoo the hens in front of us." They left the aeroplane for Moonface and Silky to do what they liked with and set off home. And dear me, how astonished their mother was to see the green-winged hens, the snow-white goat, and the fine garden spade. "You must have been to the Enchanted Wood," she said. "We've been much farther than that," said Joe. And they certainly had, hadn't they? So does the mother know that the Enchanted Wood is magic? I don't know. Maybe she does. Right, chapter 22. The Army of Red Goblins. One day, Mother said that she would be out for the whole day, and if the children liked, they could have the old saucepan man to tea and any other 2 friends they had made. "Good," said Joe. "We'll ask Moonface and Silky." Bessie wrote a note and gave it to the little white goat to take to Moonface. The white goat was a wonderful creature. It gave the most delicious milk, it ran errands, and if any of the hens got out, it found them and drove them back. It was most useful. The goat took the note in its mouth and ran off to the Enchanted Wood. It came to the faraway tree and bleated to the red squirrel, who peeped out from his hole low down in the trunk. The squirrel took the note and bounded up to Moonface with it. Moonface was delighted and shouted down to Silky, who came up and read it. "We'll ask the old saucepan man as soon as Mr. What's-his-name is asleep," said Moonface. "The children haven't asked What's-his-name, so Saucepan will have to creep down the tree with us without telling him." They sent a note back by the little goat saying that they would arrive at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The children were excited. Mother had gone by that time, and the girls began to make the cottage look pretty with jars of flowers. Bessie baked some chocolate cakes, and Fanny made some toffee. Joe cut bread and butter. "We'll have a fine tea," he said. "I hope the saucepan man won't be too deaf this afternoon." By 3 o'clock, everything was ready. The children were neat and clean. The table looked fine with its bread and butter, cakes and toffee. Bessie went to the gate to look for their visitors. She couldn't see them coming down the lane. "They are late," she called to the others. "I expect the saucepan man has got tangled up with his saucepans or something." 3:30 came and no visitors. The children were rather disappointed. "Perhaps Moonface read my letter wrongly and thought it was 4 o'clock, said Bessie. But when 4 o'clock came and still no Moonface, Silky or Saucepan Man arrived, they got really worried. "I do hope nothing has happened," said Bessie, feeling upset. "There's all our nice tea and nobody to eat it." "We'll wait a bit longer, then we'll eat our share," said Joe. So when 5 o'clock came and nobody had arrived, the children sadly ate half the tea themselves. "Something's happened," said Joe gloomily. "Oh dear, what do you think it is?" said Bessie, alarmed. "Could we go and see?" "No," said Joe. "Not now, anyway. Mother will be back soon. We'd better go tonight. The rope is let down the tree for us to pull ourselves up by, and it won't take long to climb." "We really must find out what's wrong," said Bessie, clearing away. "We'll take their share of the tea with us." So that night, when it was quite dark, the 3 children slipped out of bed, dressed, and crept out of the back door. They had to take a lantern, for there was no moon that night. Joe swung it in front of him, and they could see where to tread. Down the dark lane they went, over the ditch, and into the Enchanted Wood. The trees were whispering very loudly together tonight. "Wisha, wisha, wisha," they said. "Oh, how I wish I knew what they were saying," said Fanny. "Come on," said Joe. "We'd better not be too long, Fanny. We want to be back by daylight." They made their way down through the dark wood. As there was no moon, there were no fairy folk about at all that night. The children soon came to the faraway tree and looked for the rope. But there was no rope at all this time, and they had to begin to climb up as usual, holding on to the boughs carefully, for it was very difficult to see. Before they had got further than 2 branches up, a strange thing happened. Someone caught hold of Joe's shoulder and pushed him roughly down. Joe fell, caught hold of the lowest branch, and just saved himself in time. "Who did that?" he cried angrily. He undid his lantern from his belt, where he had put it whilst climbing, and flashed it up the tree, calling to Bessie and Fanny to go no further. And standing, grinning, in the lower branches of the tree were 4 red goblins with pointed ears, wide mouths, and wicked little eyes. "No one is allowed to come up the tree now," said one of the goblins. "And no one is allowed to come down either." "But why not?" asked Joe, astonished. "Because it's our tree now." "Your tree? What nonsense," said Joe. "We've come to see our friends who live in the tree. Let us pass." "No," said the goblins, and they grinned widely. "You can't come up." "It's no good," said a tiny voice beside Joe. "The goblins have taken everyone prisoner in the tree. If you go up, they'll only push you down or take you prisoners too." Joe flashed his lantern downwards, and the children saw that it was the little red squirrel speaking, the one who looked after the cushions for Moonface. "Hello," said Joe. "Do tell me what's happened. I can't understand it." "Oh, it's quite easy to understand," said the squirrel. "The land of the red goblins came to the top of the faraway tree. The goblins found the hole that leads down through the clouds and poured down it. They took everyone prisoner. Moonface and everyone else are locked up in their houses in the tree trunk. I can tell you Mr. What's-his-name and the angry pixie have nearly battered their doors down in rage." "But why have the goblins locked them up?" asked Bessie in surprise. "Well, they want some magic spells that the tree dwellers know," said the squirrel. "They are going to keep them all locked up till they tell the spells. Isn't it dreadful?" "Oh dear," said Fanny. "Whatever can we do to help them?" "I don't know," said the squirrel sadly. "If only you could get up to them, you might be able to make some plan, but the goblins won't let anybody up the tree." "Wisha, wisha, wisha, wisha," whispered the trees loudly. "You know, I can't help feeling that the trees want to tell us something tonight," said Bessie suddenly. "I always feel that they are whispering secrets to one another, but tonight I feel that they want to tell them to us." "I shouldn't be surprised," said the squirrel. "The faraway tree is king of the wood, and now that trouble has come to it, all the other trees are angry. Perhaps they want to help us." "Wisha, wisha, wisha," said the trees loudly. "Put your arm around a tree trunk and press your left ear to the tree," said the squirrel suddenly. "I have heard it said that that is the only way to hear a tree's words." Each of the children found a small tree. They put their arms round the trunks and pressed their left ears to the trees, and then they could quite clearly hear what the trees were whispering. "Help the faraway tree dwellers," the leaves whispered. "Help them." "But how can we?" whispered back the children eagerly. "Tell us." "Go up the slippery slip," said the trees in their leafy voices. "Go through the trapdoor and up the slippery slip." "Oh!" cried all the children at once. "Of course! Why ever didn't we think of it ourselves?" "Shh!" said the squirrel in alarm. "Don't let the goblins hear you." "What did the trees say?" "They said we were to go through the trapdoor and up the slippery slip," said Joe in a low voice. "We can get right up to Moonface's then. It's a wonderful idea." "Come on then," said Bessie, and the 3 of them ran to the faraway tree and felt about for the little trapdoor. Ooh, another adventure! And that's it. I have no idea how they're going to get up the slippery slip, but we'll find out next time. All right, bye-bye.